Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a furniture painter and refinisher. That is such a hard word to say. So that basically means that I take old furniture that I have around my house or something that I find on the cheap at Goodwill or Craigslist or something like that, and then I just make it over. Today I'm going to be making over this desk that I have. I'm going to do a wood and paint combination, which is something I really like to do. I'm going to do the top in a whitewashed weathered oak finish, and then I'm going to paint the apron white and do a little bit of distressing on it. I'm going to be using a lot of Dixie Belle paint products today. I'm going to list everything that I use down at the description box below, so make sure you check that out when you're done with the video. I also have links to my Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. Make sure you follow me on Instagram because I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff on there, so you can see a bunch of the projects on there before they go live here on YouTube. And I'm also going to link my Teespring shop. So I have some shirts that I have created with Teespring, so I'm going to link that below so you guys can check them out. I'm wearing one right now. This is just a little flowy tank that says Pretty Distressed on it, so hopefully I'll be wearing them in future videos. If you aren't subscribed to my channel, please click that subscribe button and hit that bell, and you will be notified anytime I upload a video here on YouTube. I'm actually sitting in front of the finished project, so this is a little bit of a spoiler right here, but if you want to see how I got this look, just keep watching. So this is the desk I'm going to be working on today. I think we got this off of Facebook Marketplace for like 20 bucks or something. Somebody was just throwing it out. These are like my favorite things to just get furniture for cheap. Well, I really like getting it for free, but 20 bucks I don't mind. I'm sorry if there is any background noise going on, but the house next door is under construction and I think they're putting doors in or something today, so I keep hearing saws, so I apologize. So this thing was in pretty rough shape, so I decided that I was going to sand the top down and do a stained finish on top. Now, I knew I wanted to do like a weathered oak finish with a whitewash, but I've never done anything like that. So what I do, just like you guys, I go to YouTube and looked for some inspiration, and this is the one I landed on. I'm gonna try not to butcher her name, Rachel Pieria, and she's with Shades of Blue Interiors. So I'm gonna link her information below in the video that I watched so that you guys can watch it too. So any of my subscribers or people who've been around my channel before know that I really love Annie Sloan chalk paint. You don't have to prep the piece, you don't have to do a primer, you don't have to sand it down, you can just paint right on top of an existing finish. Annie Sloan at the beginning of the year started selling online, which made it a lot more accessible to people, and it looks like lately within the past couple of weeks they've pulled all sales offline, and you have to drive to a local stockist, which is awesome that they're supporting just local businesses. It's making it a little bit harder to get your hands on paint. I know not everybody is within driving distance, so I've been checking out some other paints. So today I am going to be using Dixie Belle paint again. I recently used Dixie Belle paint for the first time. I redid a dresser for my son's room and kind of did a first impressions review of the paint. I'll link that up here in case you guys want to check out that video. So again, today I'm going to try some more Dixie Belle paint because you can buy it online, so it's going to be easier for you guys to get your hands on. It is also a little bit more affordable than Annie Sloan paint, which is nice. Like I said in the intro, I'll link all the products that I use down in that description box below, so make sure that you check that out. I'm going to zoom you in and show you how I did it. So I'm going to be using my DeWalt Random Orbit sander with a vacuum. I am going to use a 60 grit sandpaper to strip this. You just apply that right on there. And make sure you're using all your safety stuff like ear protection. I always use a mask as well as goggles. So this is pretty straightforward. You just plug it in. I recommend doing this outside because even though this does have a vacuum and it sucks up a lot of that dust, it still does create a lot of dust. So I'm doing this outside on my daughter's balcony. And as you can see, as I'm going over this area, there are a lot of gouges on it. So I'm going to spend a lot more time buffing those out than you typically would if you didn't have scratches like this. I'm not going to be able to get them out completely, but I'm definitely going to be able to make them look better. So I'll zoom you in and show you that. So this is a section that was really roughed up. So I'm just going over that with that 60 to strip all that existing finish off and kind of get some of those gouges off. And then once I'm done with my sander, I take the pad off and kind of get into these little grooves that you can't get when you're working with the actual sander, and just kind of use your hands to manually get it out of all the crevices. I'm going to take another sanding pad. This is 150. I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit more. You can go up and do 220 after this and, you know, go as high as you want to make it as smooth as you want. I like a rough finish, and I know I'm actually going to take a wire brush to this and rough it up even more just to get a little rustic look when I'm using the white wax later. So since this is pine, I want to create grooves in it that are going to mimic oak. So I'm taking this little wire brush. I'm just using this because this is what I have. I recommend getting a larger one because it's going to make this step, this process that you're doing right here a little bit easier for you, but I just decided to use what I have. So I'm just rubbing this back and forth here to kind of mimic the look of oak grain. Okay, now the surface is all prepped to stain. So before we start staining, I take a tack cloth and I just get off all that dust before I start staining. So the items you're going to need for this portion are some mineral spirits, the gel stain I'm going to be using from Dixie Belle, a foam applicator, shop towels, and the first thing you want to do is take a bunch of the shop towels and prepare them so that you have them ready to go while you're staining. So I just take them off one at a time and kind of fold them into fourths like this and just make a nice little pile so it's ready to go when I'm ready to start staining. So I have my nitrile gloves to protect my hands from the stain. I have a stainless steel bowl to put the mineral spirits in. I'm going to stir up my gel stain and get that ready to go. And I'm actually putting it in a separate container. And I have a bucket ready to go to put all my used cloths in. So I took one of those shop rags, dunked it in the mineral spirits, and I'm just putting a coat of this all across the top. This gives you a slip coat to put your gel stain on top of, and it's just going to make it easier. It'll let you work with the gel stain longer, which is good if you're a beginner with this. So really simple. I'm just going to work in small sections at a time and paint this on full strength. Once I'm complete getting the stain on, I'm going to take one of those shop towels that I had folded up in the beginning, and I'm just going to wipe the excess stain off. Gel stain is very pigmented, so it's going to give you fuller coverage in just one coat, which is why I really like it, because I don't like having to do multiple coats if I don't have to. So again, work in small sections like this and just keep going across the entire tabletop. So I've zoomed you in here and just sped it up a little bit to show you a little bit more of the process here. Gel stain is oil-based, so when you're done with all the applicators and the shop towels, I just throw them in that bucket, and then when I'm done for the day, I dry everything outside before I throw it away, because it is really flammable. So make sure you're reading all your warning labels and being very careful and working in a well-ventilated room. So after this dries for 24 hours, I'm going to go in with my second color, which is a gray, to give it a more weathered look. I'm going to be applying it with these wiping cloths. They're just lint-free t-shirt rags. You can get them at any hardware store. And I am just wiping this on full strength. And instead of working in sections this time, because this is just a regular stain, it's not a gel stain, it needs to set on here a little bit longer to get more of that color pigment in there. So I'm actually going to apply this to the entire tabletop and then go back and wipe it off. You can use a brush or anything else that you use to apply stain to do this. I just prefer to use this wiping cloth, so that's what I'm using. And when I go to wipe it off, I just get a clean one, and I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. I don't let the stain sit on there for any longer than it takes me to get on. If you want a deeper color, if you want more gray, you can let it sit on there a little bit longer, but with this varathane stain that I'm using, it's pretty pigmented too, and you don't really have to leave it on there that long to achieve the color that you want. So while this is drying, I'm going to move on to painting my apron. The first thing I'm going to do is clean it off with some mild soap and water. Dixie Belle does have a cleaner, which I still have not tried. I swear I'm going to order some of that. So you need to clean this off and get all the dust off before you start painting. It's a really important process in getting your paint to adhere correctly, so don't skip it. You want to get all that dust and dirt off. I'm also going to remove all of my drawers and set them aside before I start painting. So the color I'm using today is called Fluff. It's an off-white, but it has a gray undertone versus having like a cream undertone to it. So I'm just going to take my can and shake it up and pour it in a disposable container. I'm going to be using my Purdy Natural Bristle Sash brush. I'm going to give that a spray just with my little water bottle just to dampen the brush up. I find that the water just helps smooth out the paint a little bit as you're applying it. So this is my first coat. Again, this is a furniture paint, so I don't need to prime or do any additional step before I go on and apply my paint. This first coat will go on pretty thick, but it will not cover the wood completely. And as I'm painting, I do kind of spray my paint and mix it up every couple of minutes just so it doesn't get a film on top, and it just helps it to keep nice and smooth as you're painting on that first coat. So I try to keep my brush strokes just up and down so I'm not doing anything crazy because I'm going for a little smoother finish on here. And I'm actually not taking my hardware off this time. I'm just going to paint on top of it because I think it's really cute, but I just want to soften it up a little bit. So when I'm painting hardware, I always paint that first and, move the handle up, make sure I'm getting in kind of like all the crevices really good. And then when I'm done with that, I just move on and I paint the rest of the drawer front. This paint dries pretty quickly in typically about 2 hours. It just needs to be dry to the touch. So I'm going to go ahead and start my second coat. Same way, just pouring my paint in here. I do spray this a little bit more with more water just to make it a little bit thinner. I just like my second coat to be thinner. And again, I'm going to spray my brush down and just start painting again up in those up and down motions like I did on my first coat. So I'm just going to go on the whole piece and do a second coat. And for me, this was enough coverage. Sometimes with whites, you're going to want to do like even up to 3 coats, but for me, 2 coats covered it. So now I'm going to jump back up to the top of the desk to put a top coat on it. This has cured for at least 24 hours and I'm just wiping the dust off, and I am going to put shellac on top of this. You could actually use any water-based top coat on top of here. If you have, I use General Finishes a lot, so if you have one of those from another one of my projects, you could use this. I'm just using this because this is what the tutorial I watched use. I'm using this chip brush to apply it because they're really cheap and I'm just going to throw it out when I'm done. So it's really simple. I'm just painting this on in thin strokes. Just watch your brush strokes. Make sure you don't have any little hairs fall off of your brush as you're doing this, but really simple. I'm just going to make a thin coat of this all the way across the top. There's not a lot of technique for applying shellac. You just want to make sure that you don't have any drips and that you're doing a really thin coat. Now while that is drying, I'm going to move on to waxing my painted apron, and I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in clear. It looks really white in the can, but when you actually wipe it on your piece, it is clear. So to apply this, I'm going to use an old t-shirt just because they are very lint-free, and I'm just going to dip that right in my wax and just start rubbing it onto the piece. Now I'm going to use this cloth for all my flat pieces like this, but then when I get to the legs of the desk, I'm actually going to use a wax brush. I just find it's easier to get into the crevices of the leg when you have a brush like this. Again, you don't have to use one, you can just use a cloth. I just have them on hand, so that's why I'm using mine here. Now for this wax, you just apply it, let it set for 15 minutes, and then you take a rag and just wipe it in really good, and then you're done. After my shellac has dried completely, I'm going to put a white wax on top here, and I'm making that with my clear wax, and then I'm going to add a little bit of my Fluff paint to that, and then just mix it up really well. Dixie Belle actually has a white wax that you can buy already mixed, but I didn't have that, so I'm just making my own. You can do this with any color paint as well. So I'm just going to apply this to the entire top of the desk, and what this is going to do, it's going to sit in those little tiny grooves that I made with my wire brush before we started staining, and that white is just going to soak up into those little holes and just give it a little bit more interest. Now this is pretty hard to see on camera, but I really love the way it looks in person, so I'm going to zoom you up on the edge and hopefully it gives you a better idea of the difference that it makes in adding the white wax. You can totally skip this step, but this was on that tutorial I watched and it was really cool looking, so I wanted to try it out. Okay, so once I'm done with this, again, I'm going to wait 15 or 20 minutes, and then buff the entire top just to finish the piece off. And I did decide to distress this just a little tiny bit. So I took a 400 grit sandpaper, which is a really fine sandpaper, and I'm lightly distressing the edges. I always do the corners like this, and then the edges of the drawer. So I'm going to zoom you in and show you that. And then I also distressed the hardware just a little bit. And now I'm completely done. So again, to remind you, here is the before and here is what the desk looks like after. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a thumbs up, or you can leave me a comment below, or any questions you might have. I try to check those comments at least once a week. I'll be back with another video soon, but in the meantime, you can always check out prettydistressed.com to see some more of my work. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.